it's not just about designing the product. I'm always also thinking about the people that actually have to manufacture that product, assemble it, do whatever. You want to make everyone's life as easy as possible.
Welcome to A Founder's Life, and I'm your host, Leo Gestetner. On this show, we dive into the real stories behind the highs and lows of entrepreneurship and how we pursue a more balanced and meaningful life along the way. This podcast is sponsored by Thanks, helping founders like us scale with reliable remote talent. Email founders@thanks.com. That's THANKZ.com with the subject line, A Founder's Life, and you'll get $1,000 off your first month. Now, I'm excited to be joined today by Stuart Harvey Lee. Stuart, thank you for joining us. I'd love you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leo. How are you today?
Excellent, thank you.
Good, yeah. So my name's Stuart. I'm the founder of Prime Studio, which is a product and brand design consultancy based in New York City. My journey there was, I actually started, Leo, as an engineer, a trainee engineer in a steelworks just outside Sheffield before I discovered the world of design. So I switched, did a master's degree in industrial design at the Royal College of Art. Pretty much moved to the States right after I graduated, cut my teeth at a couple of different design agencies. And then after about 6 or 7 years, I founded Prime Studio. And I've been very fortunate to be running that for 27 years this year.
Excellent. Are there actually any steelworks still left in Sheffield?
Very few, unfortunately. Very few. But it was a great experience. It taught me two things. It taught me, A, that obviously I didn't particularly want to go into heavy engineering, but B, it gave me a great appreciation for people who work in manufacturing. And that's something that I'm always cognizant about when we're doing our design work, because it's not just about designing the product. I'm always also thinking about the people that actually have to manufacture that product, assemble it, do whatever. You want to make everyone's life as easy as possible.
Makes sense. And tell us a little more about Prime Studio. So what's a typical customer look like, or what are you doing for them?
Yeah, so we don't really have a typical customer. I mean, we're quite generalist. So we do three main things for our clients. So one of them is product design or industrial design. So that's designing physical objects. We also work quite a lot on packaging design. So that can be structural packaging. It can be graphic design. And for some of our brands as well, we do some upfront brand positioning and strategy work. And honestly, our client mix is really varied. So we work with like larger multinational CPGs. So think like the Unilevers and the Henkels and Bayer, people like that. But we also work a lot with disruptor startups. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Harry's Razors, the razor company. So, we're the firm that launched Harry's Razors, basically. We developed all the initial product for them, packaging, introduced them to their manufacturing partners. So it's a nice mix between working with these scrappier kind of startups and then working with these much larger corporations where perhaps you're involved in larger scale initiatives, but there's all the bureaucracy that comes with, navigating charter gates and senior leadership. It's nice to work with the founders. That's why I like working with startups. And, we've had some great successes. So that's what I say. I feel very fortunate to be still doing this 27 years.
That's a nice set of achievements there, and some great brands.
Yeah.
And talk to us a little more about what family means to you.
Well, family's everything. I mean, family is really super important to me. I wouldn't say I had a bad upbringing, but it was a strange upbringing. My parents, not super strange, but my parents split when I was 1 year old. They had me when they were very young. So I was actually brought up by my grandparents, which was great. I mean, they basically became my parents, and my parents almost, because they were so young, became my friends. So I've always respected those kind of family bonds. My wife, I've been married to for 29 years. We actually met at college, at the Royal College of Art. We have one daughter. She's 26 now. I've always tried to find time for family to balance, the work side of things, the business side of things. We've always done a lot of travel together. Even when we go away now, my wife and my daughter always says to us, "Hey, can I come too?" So for example, this November, we're all going to Mexico City to celebrate Thanksgiving together. And that travel bug honestly also influenced my daughter, which I think is great. I mean, you're a traveler. You know how important it is. I'm kind of proud of the fact that she still wants to come away with us, even though she's 26. That's a great feeling. But actually, when she was at college, she went to Fordham here in the city. They gave her a special award, and they gave her titled her the Global Ambassador because she did so much traveling during her time at college.
That's great. And I think it's always lovely when the kids, as they get older, mine are a little younger than yours, but 20 and 22. And yeah, if they want to spend time with you, they want to travel with you, I think it shows you've obviously been a great father.
There's no better feeling than knowing that your kids still want to spend time with you. Yeah,
definitely. And what do you like to do for health? And again, I look at that. It can be physical health, mental health, nutrition. Sort of, what does health mean to you?
Yeah. So for me, I think health starts with healthy eating. So, I have a great passion for food and I love to cook. So cooking is actually the way I relax at the end of the day. Some people find cooking stressful, but I actually kind of like to do something a little bit out of my comfort zone and experiment. But mainly, by cooking, I think you can control what it is that you're eating. So, we always try and make sure we're, having a really balanced diet. I'm very careful about things like salt intake, that type of thing. So food is really super important because I think if you're not putting the right stuff in your body's it's always going to struggle. One thing that I started, Leo, which I really love, I do a little stretch routine every morning. I have this one song that's about 7 or 8 minutes long. And I do a morning stretch because I've always honestly struggled with my lower back a little bit. So it's really a way to just, get the day started the right way and get a bit of flexibility. But I've been doing it now for maybe 15 or 16 years. And the wonderful thing is I've done it all over the world. So, and every morning when I do it, I think about the other places in the world where I did it. Like I remember that time I was looking out over, the skyline of Tokyo. I remember that time when I was looking out over a beach on Costa Rica. So it's become like a ritual, really. So that's important to me. If for some reason I miss that morning stretch, I feel a bit out of sorts all day. And I think, piggybacking on that, I've actually recently got quite into yoga. So yoga from the point of view of really about the flexibility, not necessarily around the spirituality. I'm very fortunate where I am today in the Hudson Valley, where just down the road from the Storm King Art Center. I'm not sure if you know that place. It's a great outdoor sculpture park, 500 acres. Beautiful. And I started doing yoga there basically on Saturday mornings. They run a yoga session outside and you're way up on a bluff and you look out over these gorgeous 500 acres and look at all these sculptures. So I was spoiled from the get-go. That was my first experience of yoga. But since then, I've obviously expanded a little bit. And then, really the main thing from a fitness point of view, I'm a very keen cyclist. So that's kind of my passion. I used to be a soccer player. I used to play a lot of soccer, but I blew my knee and recovery was just becoming too hard for me after the games. So that's when I got into cycling because of the fact it's no impact. So, that's my passion. I've been avidly watching the Tour de France for the last 3 weeks. Last September, actually, I was in Montreal with my wife and we actually got to see the cycling Grand Prix in Montreal. So I got to see the race and all my heroes right at the finish line, which was amazing. Tadej Pogacar won the race. And that's pretty much what I do. It's a mix of, stretch and slogging up the hills on the bike.
Lovely. And I think you got a couple of serious bike challenges coming up.
Yeah, I'm going to try and do 2 century rides, so 200-mile rides in September. I did my very first century 10 years ago to celebrate my 50th birthday. So this year I've done a couple in between as well. I actually did a century with my wife and my daughter. We're all keen cyclists. We all cycle together. So, but they've left me on my own to do these 2 in September. You need to do the training, and they don't have time for the training.
What do you like to do for fun, except cycling?
Fun? Well, quite honestly, I'm not the best person at relaxing. You'll never find me just sat in a chair. I'm always getting up. I'm always thinking of something to do. So, food to me is fun, as I mentioned. Travel is fun too. But honestly, my passion is gardening. I really, really relax, and when I'm out there in the yard. And I've always enjoyed it, but I've been thinking about it, and I think that part of it is because what I do for a living is design things that are going to be manufactured. using industrial processes. And so I think there's gardening and seeing something grow organically and naturally is a nice antidote to that. It plays into the food thing too. I mean, this weekend I made, fresh pesto with basil that I grew from seeds. I made some gazpacho yesterday with tomatoes that I grew. So, there's a nice kind of continuity there, a nice circle of life.
Yeah, sounds like a great setup. And how does a balanced life look for you?
Well, I've been very fortunate that I always been run my own company for 27 years. I've basically been able to steer the decisions that I wanted to make. Work-life balance has always been important. I've never, in the office, we don't work late. So basically everyone stops at like 5:30, 6 o'clock. I think having that time to reflect is really important. And that's not very common in the creative services industry. A lot of people are in the office till 9, 10 o'clock. And I just don't think that's conducive to creativity. So that's really important to me. But I think it's also, I kept Prime Studio small by design, actually. And that was for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't ever want to get into a situation where I had to take projects just to feed the machine and to pay the salaries. I wanted to be selective about the clients that we work with. And it also allows me personally to be involved in almost all of the projects in some ways, some more than others, because, that creativity is what keeps me going. So I didn't want to become a manager or someone who's only looking at spreadsheets. I'm not as hands-on design, but I give creative direction to the design team, So like I said, I kept it small by design, and I don't think that was through lack of ambition. I think it was ambition to have the right balance, to your point, Success to me is not about dollars in the bank. It's about having the right balance and how much is enough. I mean, I'm very lucky. I've got an apartment in the city. I've got a home here in the Hudson Valley. I've got like a vintage F-150 out on the drive that I love to drive around in. I don't need that much more money. I can go on vacation pretty much wherever I want. I mean, don't get me wrong. Everyone likes you're in business as an entrepreneur to make money, but I've always tried to maintain that right balance. I didn't want the business to consume my life. I wanted the business to supplement my life.
A true lifestyle business.
Yeah. And, like I said, that's the beauty of, being an only founder, is that you can control that. I mean, I sometimes regret not starting the business with partners. It can be lonely being a solo founder. I'm lucky that I have a couple of kind of peer groups that, other agency founders, where we have a kind of like monthly Zoom call. Actually, this week we have a in-person get together, and they're from different agencies, but it's nice. It started actually during COVID. It was more of a support group for giving tips on how to deal with landlords when you couldn't pay your rent. And, how do we suddenly take these teams that we're used to working with 9 to 5 in office and motivate them when they're remote? But it's morphed into something else. So that's a nice antidote to being the sole decision maker.
Perfect. And what's been a pivotal moment for you in your life?
One really pivotal moment. It was a while ago. But when I was studying for my master's degree, I managed to get an internship in Japan. So I went to Japan for the summer and worked for a design agency in Tokyo. Previous to that, I think probably the furthest I'd ever traveled was maybe Germany or Austria from the UK. And honestly, it blew my mind. I love Japan. I love the culture. I love the attention to detail. But most of all, it made me realize that what I was studying, I could leverage that anywhere in the world. So that was the thing which I think gave me the impetus to move to the States from England. When I graduated, it was a pretty bad recession in England. And in the early 90s, the English manufacturing industry was not in good shape. So there were very few jobs for graduate designers. But having had that experience and going to Japan made me realize I can go anywhere in the world and do this. So that's why I jumped ship. And I think that was a really big pivotal moment.
Yeah, it's a pretty portable profession.
Yes, very much so. And, I spent some time a few years ago, more than a few years ago, actually. I got invited to Korea as part of the a program that was run by the Korean Industrial Design and Packaging Council. And they basically took foreign designers and assigned them to small or medium-sized Korean businesses. And I went to a sheet metal factory, actually, in Incheon. And I was working with a bunch of engineers there who had very, very limited English language skills. And honestly, we communicated via sketching and literally like thumbs up, maybe. No, we don't want to do that, And I did that for like 8 or 9 weeks, and it was a great experience. So to your point, it's very, very portable.
And what's one piece of advice you'd give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
I've worked with a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs during, our work with startups. Be ready to be in it for the long haul. I think, quick wins, sometimes fleeting wins. I think it's also super important. You have to be able to pivot. You know this as well as everyone else. Like the idea that you start developing will most likely not be the idea that you're still working on in 5 years' time or 10 years' time. So you have to be able to pivot. But I do think it's important to have a vision for what that roadmap is going to be before you start off. We get so many, I'm going to say not necessarily entrepreneurs, but inventors. And they come to us and they think they've got this one great idea, that they want to develop, and that's what's going to make them their millions. But one product is never enough. What's the product after that? And I always say to them, it can be the greatest product, but, you're going to have to persuade the buyer at Target to take something off the shelf and put your one product there and trust that that you've got your supply chain in order, everything else. And it very rarely happens that you have that one killer product.
So very true. That trying to persuade the retailer that you're worth replacing someone else for, because they're not suddenly creating new space.
Yeah, precisely. It's not like they have an empty gap on the shelf and they're just shopping around for something to put in there. So you have to persuade them, and then you also have to show them that you're going to make better margins for them than the thing that they took off the shelf.
Great advice. Thank you. And how can people find you?
Our company website is primestudio.com, all one word. And that's probably the easiest place to find me. I'm on LinkedIn, just Stuart Harvey Lee. I have an Instagram account, so they can find me there also.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation. And, it's always good to actually, what I really enjoy about your podcast is that it is about that balance, and that's always been super important to me. So it was really nice to actually have the time to reflect upon that. Sometimes, in our day to day, we sometimes forget, and don't get me wrong, I still have stressful days and, client deadlines. It's not all balanced, but, I strive for that balance wherever I can.
Thank you. Yeah, that's true. It's striving for balance rather than being in balance. No true entrepreneur is truly in balance all the time.
If you're truly in balance, you're not trying hard enough, in my opinion.
Yes, very true.
All right.
Well, thanks for listening to today's episode. And if you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and leave a review.